Hi, this is Bill McGrath from the Hyatt team. I want to welcome you to the UDL Coteaching PLC project. This video will give you an overview of some key elements of the project, your role as a site leader, and some materials for you to use to start your PLC at your school. A couple items we'll be going over in this presentation. The site leader role, what you need to know, and some of the details on that. Reviewing logistics for your team in terms of how they get into Google Classroom and what they will use that for a little bit. Timesheets that need to get submitted after your PLC meetings and how to fill those out correctly and where to send them and whatnot. And digital materials and sharing piece, which your PLCs will do. And then two pieces of information which could be helpful as you get started with your PLC in the first one. The first is thinking about how UDL as a framework can be value added to other things that are happening in a school, and certainly value added to the cohort professional learning that many of your team members will have taken part of either this year or last year with the curriculum office. And finally, we do give you a resource for kind of an introduction of UDL and how it relates to what's happening in Maryland and Montgomery County Public Schools. And that may be appropriate for some members of your team or all members of your team. It might be useful for you to watch together or just share as a resource to others. So you signed up to be site leader, and we're very excited about that. You have some basic requirements. Your primary function is to facilitate a school PLC meeting twice a month with reflection, and that'll take place beginning in November December, January, February, and March for a total of 10 PLCs. Your job is to support the school team PLC in creating and posting monthly artifacts from their twice a month from materials that they develop as part of their PLC process, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. Another role is to monitor the completion of the timesheets that we need to use to make sure that members of your team get paid for their participation, and we'll go into details of what that looks like. And then finally, another part of your role as a site leader is to observe collaborative planning practices and UDL planning of your school PLC. So you will receive up to $900 of stipend pay over the 5 months. And how that breaks out is you'll spend 3 hours, or you'll be paid for 3 hours for each of the 10 PLC meetings, and that'll include your time, 1 hour for the participation in the PLC meeting, and then 2 hours for planning the meetings and submitting the PLC members' stipend sheets. That'll be a total of 30 hours over the course of the 5 months, and will total $600 in stipend pay if you complete all of those timesheets, and you do need to complete a timesheet with other members of the PLC to get that. The second piece of your compensation as a site leader comes from 3 hours a month for 5 months, or 15 hours total for up to $300 for additional duties in your role as a site leader. And I'm going to go over those next. So what are those other duties that we're asking you to do as a site leader? So it's 15 hours over 5 months. You're going to spend about 2.5 hours meeting with myself and Alice Wright, about 30 minutes after the RITSI meeting, starting in October, going to February, to kind of touch base, make sure people are okay, sharing a little bit, and making sure everyone has what they need to get started, and then continue to be effective in their PLCs at their school. Over the course of those 5 months, you'll spend about 5 hours looking at videos like this and reviewing materials that you can use in your PLC and figuring out some of the processes that you need to complete as part of a PLC. Another 5 hours over the 5 months, you'll be reviewing some instructional materials and artifacts that your PLC members create as part of their participation in the PLC. They'll be spending an hour in the PLC working together, and then they're paid for additional 2 hours for collaboratively planning and material development, which can be with their co-teacher, or it can be working individually to to develop some materials that are an outgrowth of that collaborative planning. And then finally, the last 2.5 hours of this time over 5 months will include myself or Alice coming out to your school in October or November, and then again in December or January, and to just go over see how things are going with the PLC, visit classrooms of your PLC members, and then look at those artifacts that they're creating as part of the planning, and look and see, hey, what do we see as part of UDL that's clear in some of these artifacts, and what things might you suggest to them to clarify how these really do line up with the UDL, or other upgrades they can make to those. So that's part of our role, and part of what we're asking you to devote time for, is that when we come out, and we'll work with you to schedule those. And that's really one of the things that we enjoy most, is getting out to schools and hearing what you're doing, and getting to see some classrooms. And we'll make sure that when we do go into classrooms, that's definitely not evaluative, and a positive experience. At least we felt like it was last year for everyone. Next is logistics that you need to know for your PLC, and these are just details. And this gets into some of the slides that this presentation as Google Slides are available on the share site, and we'll share these with you so that you can copy some of these slides individually and use them with your team. And this is a collection of them that are probably helpful. The first one is you're going to go to Google Classroom, and to get into the class where we're going to be sharing materials for your PLC members and for you, the class code is listed here, and there'll be a separate video that orients you to the details of what the Google Classroom for this project looks like, and what resources you can find there. Timesheets are a big thing with this, and we really want you to make sure you get in a routine of submitting these consistently and timely, so people can start to get paid, and that you are able to utilize the funds that have been allocated for each of your team members, and to participate in this project. So when you complete timesheets, five big things. Employee ID needs to be there. First and last name, got to have it. Start and end times, as well as total hours, and I'll show you what that looks like on an example. Signature and the date. We pre-fill some information on the activity as well as the account code, and we will send this information out to you in a packet that will have where to send it, but you'll send it to Kathleen Ham, Physical Disabilities at Lynbrook Center, and that will be in the paper packet that we give to you that has all these pre-filled. So what do you put on the timesheets? First thing is employee ID. Make sure they put first and last name, beginning and end time. This is an example. The PLC meeting was on the 23rd of January. They started at 4. The PLC ran from 4 to 5, and then they had 2 additional hours of collaborative planning that ended up totaling 3 hours. So one thing that comes up sometimes, that people, we only have one PLC per pay period, and the answer is no, you can do that. The key thing is that people can't be paid stipend for work on that same day that you're holding the PLC and billing for it on here. And so you could hold 2 PLCs in one pay period. Sometimes that's what happened, is people are trying to catch up if they miss one, or just the scheduling, they weren't able to do it just once every 2 weeks, and it didn't fall perfectly in a pay period. So just get in touch with me or Alice if you have any questions with that. Make sure they sign it and date it. It really delays things if we have to send these back to you and have them do that again. And the other thing that's real important is your principal needs to sign these to be able to be processed at our office. They're just like every other thing in terms of a timesheet. At the building, they need to sign this before it comes in to us and in our office to be able to pay it out of the grant. Okay, so before you submit timesheets, you're going to verify each timesheet is complete. As I just described, your principal is going to sign and date the timesheets as a supervisor. have the completed signing sheets for the meeting. Again, we're going to send you a paper packet with all this broken out for all the months, so they're ready to go, but you need to make sure that they're ready at the meeting and get that done before they leave. And you're going to have a submission sheet with a checklist for accuracy, and then again, here's the address of where you're going to send that. So please pay close attention to that.